That's lovely. Yeah.
That is so far away from anything I've ever heard of
Yeah. Yeah.
in this,
Yeah.
probably anywhere
Right. Right.
as a 13 or 14-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you all very much for joining us this afternoon. Thank you to everyone online who's joining us. Hello. Really, really glad that you're here for the 2022 Last Word Lecture Series. This has been such a cool series as I think back over the years and the different people that we've had, the different speakers who I asked the same question of, and everybody has a very intriguing and different answer of what would you say if this were the last time you were able to address a crowd? What really matters most? So before I introduce the speaker, let's take a moment of silence and recognize God's presence here with us. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we give you thanks for our time together. Bless our conversation. Open our ears and our hearts to hear your loving words spoken through Mr. Porter. We pray for the needs of all those in the world who are in need. We pray especially for the people of Ukraine and Russia. We pray for the students, staff, and the shooter at Olathe East. We are mindful of all those who suffer because of winter weather and all who suffer because they experience the winter of war, of those who know the cold winds of oppression and violence, of cold hearts and frozen relationships. May our prayers awaken in us the need to reach out in love and grant us grace to see you in all whom we meet and serve. In your name we pray. Amen. So today I would like to welcome Mr. Toriano Porter. He is a national award-winning opinion writer, the greatest writer in the world.
No, the greatest writer of all time.
The greatest writer of all time. Just so you know, you're in the presence of the greatest writer of all time. He writes for the Kansas City Star editorial board. That was where I first took notice of his work. He wrote an amazing piece called The Power of You're Not Like the Rest of These Guys. It's a really beautiful piece. You should check it out. He is a native of St. Louis, but he's called Kansas City home since 2007. He's a 3-time author. He's a distinguished motivational speaker and dedicated mentor to young people in the metropolitan area. So please help me welcome Mr. Porter.
All right. Good afternoon. Hope you guys can hear me okay. I just want to take this time to say thank you to Reverend Kelly Demo, correct? I want to say demolition, but it's not. I want to thank you guys for coming. St. Paul Apostle, right? St. Thomas the Apostle. St. Paul is the church of St. Louis. I'm sorry about that, my bad. St. Thomas More, right?
That's the other one.
So this is just St. Thomas.
We get it all the time. We're used to it.
All right.
St. Thomas the Apostle.
St. Thomas the Apostle. I need to do some research. Well, I will say this. I'm real confession real quick. I have not been inside a church building since COVID. I feel the presence of God in this building, and I'm glad to be in here. Like when you were doing the intro, I was feeling the spirit of the Lord, and I really appreciate you guys having me here. Like Reverend said, she read a piece of work that I put out called The Power of Words. When I was 15 years old, I was kind of running with the wrong crowd. I grew up in South St. Louis, and it's a little rough. And I attended a school that was predominantly white. I was bused. I was voluntarily bused to this school. And again, I was hanging with the wrong crowd from the city. And I had a friend, a young lady who was 16 years old. And she, I guess, noticed my potential maybe. And she said something to me that stuck ever since. You're not like the rest of these guys out here. Do something with yourself. And that stuck with me from from the time I was 18-year-old college freshman being kicked off the football team to my sophomore year when I flunked out of school. I used to say they kicked me out, but because I'm more mature now and I'm owning my behavior, I flunked out. I did not go to class. And so when I go and speak to young folks, I always tell them about ownership. And my ownership is I did not go to class. I deserved to flunk out of school. But with that being said, even when I flunked out and I went to 3 different colleges in a span of a year, Tiffany Ford is her name. What she said to me at 15 stuck in my head. You're gonna be somebody in life. That allowed me to just keep pushing through all the adversity. And so fast forward, I guess 32 years later, my colleagues and I on the editorial board were just having a conversation about words and the power of words. And you know, in 2022, there's been a lot of rhetoric out, good, bad, and evil. And words are powerful, and we're learning that. And so we just started talking about the power of words. So we all decided that we would write a piece on words that just stuck. And that's what I came up with. I wrote a piece called The Power of Words. And so that's how I got on Reverend's radar. And I want to read that for you guys in case you don't subscribe to the Star. and you never read my work. I'll read it. Words are powerful and can change lives. I was thinking of something a close friend offered me more than 33 years ago that left an impact on me. You're not like the rest of these guys, Tiffany Ford said. She was a 16-year-old junior at Eureka High School in Eureka, Missouri. I was an impressionable 15-year-old running with the wrong crowd. Do something with your life, she said. Chase goals and dare to dream? Me? The son of a pair of high school dropouts? My life matters? Who knew? Tiffany is married now, and lives in Kentucky with her husband and 3 children. The seed she planted in my head years ago never left, even at my lowest. And trust me, there have been some trying times over the course of the last 3 decades and a half. Like I just told you guys, I flunked out of school. Do something with your life plays continuously in my head. Words spoken by another close friend are forever ingrained in my soul. We're in a church, so I'm not going to say the A word, but take your butt back to Warrensburg, my lifelong friend Worry Watkins said to me. This was in the summer of 1995. I was 21 years old, and I was going through an identity crisis. I did not know if I wanted to be a schoolboy or a gangster. Well, I figured out if you're a gangster, you're going to end up dead or in jail. So I went back to school, thanks to my best friend. See, I had lost a full football scholarship in '92 as a freshman at the University of Central Missouri. I was mentally and spiritually broken by the time I flunked out of Central Missouri the following year. I was back home on the mean streets of St. Louis. Shortly after that, gang activity and drug dealing were at an all-time high. I was a broke college student with no money. The lure of street life was tempting. I enrolled in a local teachers college in the fall of 1994, but I left before the fall semester ended. I played baseball at the community college the following spring, but quit the team before the season was over. This is not in the report, but in real life, I was way out in suburban, rural Missouri, and I wanted to get back into St. Louis City where all the action was. I didn't put that in my piece though, but I'm an adrenaline junkie. But like I said, I played baseball at community college the following spring, but I quit the team before the season was over. I learned how I couldn't hit a curveball, so I was done. 3 universities in less than 1 year. It was too much to overcome, I thought. I needed to make some quick cash. Thought about hitting the block. I never did. The year I spent straddling the fence between school and the streets were challenging. It all came to a head in the summer of 1995 when I got into a verbal confrontation with a guy that I did not know. The temporary beef was short-lived. A tough conversation with my best friend Worry followed. He reminded me that jail or death was on the other side of just one wrong choice. I was back at UCM in Warrensburg within 2 weeks after that conversation to study journalism and creative writing. Worry's advice took on even more meaning when I got the call that he had been murdered on the streets of North St. Louis in 2008. He was 33. The news crushed me, but those were the stakes we faced in our hometown. I wouldn't trade the journey from struggling college student to wannabe thug to opinion journalist. The words of encouragement offered by two lifelong friends were priceless. They empowered me to believe I could contribute to society in some way. We should all have people in our lives that inspire us to be better. Thank you. I did career day today at University Academy, and I had to make them clap. So I'm glad I didn't have to do that for you guys. Thank you. I said, hey, listen. No, I'm supposed to be at home in a hoodie and sweatshirts because we work from home now in Zoom. I say, you guys made me get up and put on all these clothes. You better give me an ovation. And so I was telling the kids I've been watching, I need to get back in church because I've been watching this Netflix documentary on Kanye West, and they're showing old footage of him, and something that stuck in my head. He kept saying, I'm the greatest rapper of all time. So now I'm like, I'm the greatest rapper of all time. I told that to the kids this morning. They were cracking up. So it's just a little inside joke me and the Reverend had. I am humble, like seriously. I am here to serve. And in my job at the KC Star, again, when I grew up at 18 years old in Warrensburg, I knew I wanted to write for the KC Star newspaper. I was 18. It took me until I was 42 years old to write for the Star. That's 24 years worth of grind and grit. But you know what else? Faith. I never lost it. I set my heart and my desire on what I wanted to do, and I never lost it. I've been fired, I've been laid off, but I still chased that goal. So I wanted to write about sports because it's easy to me. It's natural. God put me in a position to serve people. So now I write opinion pieces. There's nothing easy about that. My email is public. Oh my God, I forgot to turn my ringer off. My email is public. I get mail all the time. Good, bad, and ugly. I read it all. Because even in the ugly, you can learn something. With that being said, I just want to open the floor for questions, comments, or concerns. Do we have any?
I would like to kick it off. I would love to hear from you. Clearly, you're a man of faith. I should do this here so they can hear.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah. So my first question for you is, clearly you're a man of faith. How do you see yourself, how do you see God working through your gifts as you work on the Kansas City Star? Absolutely. You're clearly serving God. How do you see that being played out?
That's a great question. Again, I'll refer back to what I just said. Again, I wanted to write about sports. It was just easy, it's natural. But when I got out into the real world, my first job as a reporter was as a news reporter. I was covering the education and city council. I don't know if you guys know about school board meetings and city council meetings, but I mean, that's no glory in that. And so I was like, man, I got to get to sports. So my whole thing has been sports, but also needed a job. So I took that job. Now I was fired. I told the kids this morning, we learned a new word called insubordination. They was like, what does that mean? Listen to your mom, listen to your teacher, and listen to your supervisor. And so, so that was tough, but, got back in the game, moved to Independence, Missouri. That's how I got to the KC area 15 years ago. They hired me as a city beat reporter. So again, I cover city hall, school board, crime, all that. I was like, I gotta get in sports. So I get in sports for 2 years. I covered the Chiefs for 2 years. Now, this is when they were bad. This was 2009 and 2010, so 1-15, 2-14, all that. But it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my life. Like, I made it. I could have retired right then, right? My job was eliminated. And at that point, I'm like, oh my, what am I going to do? And so I spent that year just trying to get back into the writing game. So Lee Summit Journal comes along. It's a community paper out in Lee Summit, Missouri. They're owned by the McClatchy Company, who owns the Star. This is a little bit about my faith. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go out there for 2 years, then I'm going downtown, right? I'm greatest writer of all time. I got to get downtown. I was in Lee Summit for 4 years. I almost quit. I was almost fired. I was frustrated. And again, I'm going to repeat the message that I just repeated to a bunch of 12, 13-year-olds today. I had to look in the mirror and check myself. Had to look in my heart and check myself. My spirit was off. My mentality was off. I felt like the world owed me something. I'm 30 plus at this time. What I figured out is the world owes you nothing. Do the work. Trust the process. So once I checked myself, I discovered that it's bigger than sports. It's bigger than me now. And God put me in a position to be on the breaking news desk. Again, I'm on the breaking news desk at the KC Star, 24 years worth of grinding. Finally got on the major and daily newspaper, a goal, a dream. But then I was like, what's next? Because we can always do more, right? When we're serving, we can always do more. And so there was an opportunity inside the newsroom to reinvent ourselves. I'm like, okay, I want to be a social justice reporter, right? Like, change some stuff. And forget sports. It's bigger than sports at this time. And so I spoke up about being a social justice reporter. The big dog at the office said, nah, everything we do is supposed to have a social justice component to it. They shot down my idea. So I said, what about the KC Star's editorial board? Because at this point, we didn't have a black voice on there. There was not one African-American voice on there, even though it was a magnificent board. And the breaking news editor said, that's interesting. Why did you ask? Are you interested? I'm like, oh, yeah. And so the rest is history. And so I look back on that and I'm like, that's God. That's God. God put me in this position because now I have a voice and I provide opportunities for the voiceless. And I know in my heart that some of the words that I write is creating conversation and creating movement. So that is how I believe God has led me to this position, just never losing that faith. And so when I was invited here for the last lecture series, I was thinking to myself, this is going to be a layup. Because in October of 2020, I started writing on a piece. I'm going to read this piece. It's an unfinished piece. It's titled, If I Die Tonight. See, spent a lot of time at home during the shutdown, the quarantine, whatever you want to call it. And I was just doing inventory of my life. And I really, really, really haven't apologized to a lot of people or thanked a lot of people or showed gratitude to a lot of people. So I started putting this together. And so I'll read this. Remember, this is unfinished. It's titled, If I Die Tonight. I just wanted to, again, the prompt is, if this was the last time I was able to speak, this is what I would want the world to know. When you lose your two best friends and your firstborn child, death is no longer a fear. I have come to grips with my mortality. We live, we die. It's that simple. I am no longer afraid. I have no fears. My worst has been realized. Now, do I want to live a long and fruitful life? Yeah, bet. My grandma's 89 right now, so, if I can make it to 89, God has been good to me, But if our good Lord calls me home, it's his will. We know this. This is nothing new. I am a believer. I have accepted Jesus Christ and my Lord and Savior. I have and will continue to confess my sins. And while I'm on this earth, I will atone for my past transgressions. With that said, tomorrow is not given. That's why I got to finish this piece. Tomorrow is never given. If I die tonight and I haven't told those that I love how I feel, or expressed gratitude to those that believed in me, or humbly apologized to those I've hurt, then what kind of life have I lived? See, so much of my life has been touched by amazing people. I'm not much different than anyone. We've all had people who've pushed us and challenged us and loved us despite our shortcomings, and otherwise given us a chance to live our best lives and pursue our dreams. My mom is one of the strongest women I've ever met. I love her to death. She pretty much raised four of us on her own, and we never went without. Sure, there were days we struggled, and there was days we wondered if we'd be in the dark or without food. And every single time my mom came through. She is a natural-born go-getter, loyal and true. I just wanted her to know that I revere her very, very much. My grandma, a lady who has lived in the same home for more than 50 years, is the backbone of the family. My aunts, my uncles, all of them, they all pushed me. My neighbors on Park Avenue in South St. Louis, without you, I am nothing. So much of what I learned, so much of who I am is because of growing up with you. I have an older brother who I treasure and admire. At the age of 19, he went to the penitentiary for 13 years, selling drugs. He never allowed me to touch it. There were times he guided me through some rough patches as a teenager and always encouraged me to do the right thing. To my grandfather, Raymond Porter Sr., a guy who we literally just lost last May at the age of 89. I didn't get a chance to tell him, but I hope I've made him proud. A man who attended countless football, basketball, and baseball games in high school. He was the first person to put a baseball bat in my hand in 1982 when I was a young child. Of course, 3 years later, we know what happened. In 85, we know what happened. Kansas City, we know what happened. My grandpa and his second wife, Augustine, they saw me play college football in Warrensburg. They always came to Parents Weekend when my mom and dad weren't able. They saw me play semi-pro football as well. I played for free. Chasing that dream of being an NFL ball player. I hope I have lived a way that embodies a Porter man. To my Uncle Raymond Jr., thanks for teaching me the word, the work ethic, and the business know-how. I worked at my uncle's gas station for 4 years. He fired me. I came back. I quit. He rehired me. I was fired again. The family business, right? And then I moved to KC. And I said, deuces, Unc. But he always, man, we would have these talks in the store. And he would always preach the word to me, always. Those were some of the most powerful moments. And, you know, my uncle was big on that. To the coaches at Eureka High School in Eureka, Missouri, a school that was 27 miles west of the city limits and was at least 89% white. It was not easy coaching a bunch of athletes from different parts of the city and trying to mesh them with those from rural Missouri. The discipline and mental fortitude I learned from each of you has served me well in life. To my high school guidance counselor, Kay Kenbaum, who without her, I'm probably not even standing here. She fought hard for me to qualify for an athletic scholarship to college. Talked the science teacher into giving me a chance to enroll in a class I was not academically prepared for. Geology. I don't know rocks, I'm sorry. Even though I grew up in the city, it's all bricks. I don't know rocks. The teacher worked with me enough to help me pass that class, and I qualified for a scholarship to Central Missouri. To the coach at Central Missouri, Jeff Floyd. He recruited me out of high school. Even when it seemed like I didn't have the grades, he stayed with me. He and Mrs. Kenbaum worked extremely hard to give me an opportunity to attend college. Coach Floyd vouched for me after I returned from my 1-year suspension from school. I re-enrolled a couple of summer classes, received 2 Ds. I don't know what made me take 2 reading classes when I got back to college in the summer. I had took what you call American history from 1860 something to present, and some other class where you just had to read. It was back to back. Got 2 Ds. If you're on academic probation, you get below 2.0, you got to go. So I had just got back from academic suspension. 6 weeks later, they were kicking me back out. Coach Floyd went the extra mile to help me enter a student retention program that helped keep me in school. The first head coach I played for in college was Terry Nolan. Some of the older guys refer to him as Tricky T. Coach, I hope you're not watching this. Behind his back, of course, he was known as Tricky T. Sorry, that was my punchline. Coach Nolan offered me a scholarship after my senior year of high school, took it before the end of my freshman year, and kicked me off the team during the spring of my sophomore year. Coach Floyd talked him into taking me back once I returned to school. I had to walk on and pay my own way, but he gave me another shot. After those summer classes, Tricky T could have sent me back to St. Louis, but just as Coach Floyd did, he wanted me to stay in school. It was a life changer. I had the coolest, hippest creative writing professor while I was in college. She inspired me to take my craft seriously. She implored me to improve, and she gave me a piece of advice that I've carried with me for nearly 20 years. Just let that reflective, true voice ring every time you sit down to write. To that, Dr. Rosemary Kinder, I salute you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Again, this is an unfinished piece. I have a couple of more sections that I have to legitimately put in here. Apologies. Like I have specific apologies I want to give out to the people that I've hurt. I have not always been the best mate. Have not always been the best father. Have not always been the best friend. And I've had these opportunities in my life to meet great people, and you know, sometimes you do things that hurt them, and so I want to apologize to those folks. Then also there's a section here called love as well, and it goes along with my family and my friends, but just the love I have for people. So thank you guys for taking the time to allow me to introduce my work to the world, and whether I finish this or not, at least we know it's out here, and that's what it's about. That's my last word. Thank you. Got you. You have a question here?
Yeah, hold on one second.
Yes.
Well, go ahead and say it, and I'll re-say it, yeah.
When you start to write and you sit down to write an article, how do you approach it? Do you approach it from your faith or from the issues, or does it just happen?
That's a great question. Go ahead. No, yeah.
So he's asking about his writing process and how he approaches his writing. So.
Right. So one of the things that I do is I try to leave my personal, I guess, beliefs out of it. Everything for me is about right and wrong, okay? If something is wrong and outrageous and needs to be addressed, I come in from that angle. Now, I have faith in my writing ability. I have faith in my reporting ability to get certain facts right. And so I lean on my experience as a journalist to write my opinion pieces. But every single thing I do, that faith never wavers. But I don't write up, there's certain things that I don't touch. Religion and women's rights, if that makes sense.
You don't write about them.
No.
How do they impact your writing?
Again, I try to separate my personal feelings from my writing. You know, I try to. I'm an opinion writer, so I do have biases, but my biases leans on the side of truth. What's true and the right and wrong, what's right and what's wrong. So that guides me. That's my guiding principle, because I start talking about my beliefs and what I believe in, that's not going to necessarily jive with what everybody else believes in. And so I try to separate the two, but I'm a firm believer in what I do. Great question, though. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
I can repeat it.
How difficult has it been coming from your background to, in my way of thinking, often that's a different culture completely than what you are living in today. How difficult has that transformation been?
Right. So the question is, how difficult has it been growing up in a rough environment such as South St. Louis and getting to the point where I am now at the KC Star Editorial Board? One of the things that my mom did when I was 11 years old, she enrolled me in a voluntary busing program in St. Louis. So I was bused from my home school that was predominantly black to a school that was predominantly white. So during the day, I spend time in Eureka, Missouri, learning things. And at night, I'll come home and pick up some of the cultural things from the environment. So I got the best of these worlds. And so navigating these worlds were not easy, but I've always been a positive person. I've always been a leader. I was a captain of every single team I've ever been on. And I've always gravitated to people, and people have always gravitated to me because I'm fair. But to have that experience, see, only reason I'm a journalist to today is because in 7th grade, I was sitting in a class with my classmates. Again, I'm in a predominantly white school, and we played a game called Current Events. Teacher put us in tables. We had to hit the buzzer to answer the questions. First time we played this game, I didn't know any of the answers. I tried once, got it wrong. I felt like a dunce, so I was like, I'm cool. But after class, I've always been an advocate of myself, like I'm an advocate for myself. After class, I don't know where I got this from. Maybe my mom. I went to the teacher and I said, Mr. Sharp, I don't know this stuff, man. It's not in my homework. It's not in my books, not in my notes. How am I supposed to know this stuff? Son, he said, The name of the game is current events. Go home, watch the news, read the newspaper. I was 12. I'm 47 now. I've been doing that every single day since I was 35. Every single day. So when I got to college at 18, I already knew what I wanted to be. So the best thing my mama ever did was put me in that environment. So now I have these lived experiences where I can walk into any room and feel comfortable and feel confident and just know that I could reach people. So yeah, that's a great question though. Yes, no problem.
Are any questions from online? Okay.
Yes.
What position in football?
What position did I play in college football? I played defensive back, free safety. I was the last person on defense, so if anyone scored a touchdown, it was on me, right? And so I told the kids this, right? My mom got me a library card when I was 9. She enrolled me in Eureka when I was 11. Best 2 things she ever did. I used to and again, when I played that current events game, I forgot the punchline on that. So the next week, when I went back, you guys remember the movie Rain Man? I was like, Rain Man, pop, 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 pop. I knew everything. I knew every answer. I scored the most points that game and that year. I was really on it. I used to could retain everything. But after playing a little college football, it's a crapshoot now. But no, I play free safety. Go. Yes.
You mentioned several people that were really impactful in your life. Who do you think you've impacted personally by saying certain things? Or who do you feel like you mentored and not even realized it?
Oh my God. So I'll say this. I'm always out dealing with young folks. Like, I'm glad that I'm able to get back out now because we did virtual all last year. But there's a group here called American Public Square, and they're working with these different high schools around the area on this project, right? And they wanted me to come in as a journalist and talk. So, I talked a little bit about my career, a little bit about my books that I haven't mentioned yet, but I will, and my writing, and it was all good. It was all good, right? 2 months later, earlier this week, they invited me back out. This time it was at in Westport. And I go out there, and one of the teachers from Belton chases me down after this session is over. I don't know if you remember me from Belton. I just want to let you know that I had a child who hadn't said 10 words all year run up to me and said, I bought his books last night. So that's the type of impact hopefully I'm making, right? And that's just a recent example.
I have a question. I'm not getting anybody from Zoom. We've got about 10 people or about 7 people on there. The question I would have is, our community here at St. Thomas, we've had 4 shootings in the last several years. So the Jewish community shooting was just in our neighborhood. We had a prayer vigil here for that.
Yes.
We had the police officer that was shot at the end of our driveway, and the young man, or the man that was the perpetrator, shot as well. We had the young boy who had some real difficulty and was backing his van out that was killed. That's within our neighborhood.
John Albers. Yes.
Shooting, all of which has impacted directly people within our community. This is suburbia, which we will say that's not supposed to happen here. There are obviously, Kansas City is a very large metro area. There are places where shootings are sadly a regular part of life. And so we really can't say that anymore. We can't say they don't happen here because they do. But listening to your story, this, as our community is waking up to some of the larger realities of life in the city, what would you discuss about ways we can be involved in the greater community, ways we can hold out hope, ways we can approach these different challenges, and just the emotional impact and grief of losing people?
That's a great question. First thing you can do as an individual is continue to seek knowledge. I think it happened for me when I was 9 when my mom gave me that library card. Man, I'm a lifelong learner, right? Now, unfortunately, I am an expert when it comes to gun violence. My best friend, Warrior Watkins, the guy who I was talking about when I was 21, that said you need to go back to school. He was shot and killed at the age of 33. And my oldest boy, my firstborn son, Toriano Porter II, was shot and killed at the age of 16. So gun violence has impacted me tremendously. And so one of the things that I've done since then has all been a champion of sensible gun control. And I think what we can do is we can talk to our local representatives, we can write letters to them, but also get involved with your grassroots organizations out here in Johnson County that are starting to pop up and sprout up and to answer these certain kind of questions. So align yourself with the right people, keep a pure heart, and learn everything you can about the gun laws in Kansas and Missouri if you live in Missouri. So that's what you can do tangibly. That's what you can do, and be a proponent for change. We're not, again, if you're a law-abiding citizen, no one's going to take your gun. But if you're under 18 and you've never been trained, you don't have a permit, you shouldn't carry a weapon. And because of the laws that are on the books, especially where I am in Missouri, we have one of the highest homicide rates in the nation for a reason. It's the gun laws, And so I would say reach out to your local representatives at the local and state level.
What about hope?
What about hope?
What about holding out hope in the midst of a shooting?
The whole life is hope. Whole life is having faith, right? I'm an eternal optimist. I don't know if you guys realize that. Right? I'm all about positivity. So these things happen. These things happen. Should they happen? No. Do they happen? Yes. What do? We have to keep faithful. We have to remain faithful. We cannot give up. So the hope never fades. Like the person or people who killed my child, I don't know who they are. They've never been charged. I've never lost hope that they will be held accountable for their actions. And I know that even if they don't go to jail, even if they don't be prosecuted, they still have to answer to a higher power. And my hope is that they atone for their ways and make that, I have no hard feelings against these people. I don't hold any animosity because I could, but I don't. So that's my faith. That's my hope. Like I just remain hopeful. So we still have to do the work, right? Because what's the saying? Faith without work is dead or something like that, right? We have to do the work. And the work is, like I said, reaching out to the grassroots groups out here, reaching out to people who've been impacted by gun violence, and reaching out to your local representatives. All right. Anybody got anything else? This has been great. Oh, whoa. I got her and then you. Yes. Yeah.
Are your books fiction or nonfiction?
Okay,
What are they?
my books are available on Amazon.com. But the first one is a collection of short stories, poems, and personal essays about life growing up in South St. Louis, what I call the hood, and trying to make good. I had to navigate a lot of different things. My first 8 stories are personal essays, nonfiction essays about people who I've lost, and they didn't die of natural causes, just put it like that. And so it's a collection of personal essays, short stories, and poems. But from that book, the feedback I got let me know that people really like my nonfiction. So my second book is a novel. I wrote a book for middle school kids. It's called James Cool. It's set in 1985 in the summer. 2 things happened that summer. I met a girl, and I fell in love with baseball. And so I wanted to write a story about it. And included in that piece, in that story, is the Cardinals losing to the Royals in the World Series. That's really cool, right? But I named that book James Cool because my first book is The Pride of Park Avenue because I lived on that street, Park Avenue. My mom moved to a street called James Cool Papa Bell. We thought it was the silliest name you could ever have, right? But I'm 9 at the time. I didn't know who James Cool Papa Bell was. So again, I had a library card. So once I found out, I'm like, oh, come to find out he lived right up the street. So he's a Negro League baseball player. If you guys ever go to the 18th and Vine Museum down there, he has a statue in there. He was considered the fastest man to ever play baseball. He's also in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. He was an older guy. When he moved on our block, they named the street after him, but I met him. I walked up there and knocked on his door. Like I told you, I'm going to always advocate for myself. I'm a go-getter. Now, these local politicians in Missouri has learned that too. They don't like to call me back, but they're politicians, right? I go knock on their door. Doop, 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 doop. But no, so my second one is a novel, James Cool. I wrote that for middle school kids. My third one is an ebook, digital only. I wrote that during COVID, because I'm in Missouri, at-will employer. I could be fired at any time. I wanted to have something for myself, right? And so I wrote an ebook called "The 5 People You Meet in the Hood Before You Get to Heaven." I stole that title. A gentleman wrote a book called "The 5 People You Meet in Heaven." I read that like 20 years ago. Mitch Abram, Detroit Free Press, ESPN sports reporter. Dope book. Is a fictional book, but I always loved the title. So I wanted to do something with it. So I wrote a ebook about the 5 people closest to me that I lost within a 19-month span. That was my best friend from childhood, my son, my best friend from high school who took his own life, my stepmom who died of breast cancer, and my firstborn son, Toriano, had a half-brother who died 90 days before he did. And so these were the people who were closest to me, and I did an ebook. I wrote that, put it out. It went to #1 on Amazon. I'm not making it up. Amazon hot new release chart. And so that was in 20. And so in 21, December of 2021, just a couple of months ago, I took that ebook, booked some studio time in Westport, went and did my first audio book. It's available on Audible. If you love my voice, get that thing, because I murdered that mic. Murdered it. It's on Audible. And it's right next to Will Smith and Matthew McConaughey's. Like I don't do the algorithms. I just
We'll get the links to your books and that, we'll get it out.
absolutely. I don't do the algorithms. I just report it. Like my friend said at the news, I don't make up the news. I just report it. But yeah, so again, I wanted to take my storytelling to a different level. I want to go out in the community. I want to just tell these powerful testimonies, because my whole life has been a testimony and a testament to the power of God. That is the only reason I'm standing here. The grace of God, I am a believer in that, because, man, I'm telling you, when you have an older brother who goes to jail for 13 years, your best friend is murdered, your other best friend takes his own life, and your firstborn son is murdered, and I'm still standing here, that's God. I'm not that strong. That's the strength of God, and so here, that's it.
There's a lot for you too.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Yeah, go on. I'm here all day. I'm here. Not jacked up. I'm still here, man,
Yeah. Do you think that there is one thing that the community could do to help kids walk away?
Okay. All right. Wow. Yeah. The question is, what can society do to help children who may fall into the pitfalls of urban life or suburban life, or just growing up as a teenager and making wrong decisions? I was fortunate and blessed that I had a couple of people, my older brother and my best friend, even though they were into the street life, they had enough wherewithal to say, nah, this is not for you. So it's connecting young people with the right mentors. And that you mentioned that I am in the mentor program in Kansas City Public Schools. I've been doing that for about 3 years because, my family, even though, we were not perfect, I feel like my children are in a good place, so I wanted to do something more. I got on the editorial board. I'm like, all right, I done made it again. I'm all right. But my family's cool, but what about the community? And so I wanted to do more, so now I'm doing that. And so that's important. Mentorship programs, but compassion. And I don't know how each and every one of us spread that, but that's our job. And so when we see these young people, like I wrote something about my creative writing teacher who helped me become a better creative writer. Well, when I took her class, I was 21 years old. I was fresh back from St. Louis. You should have saw my wardrobe. I walked in there. I still had hair at the time, guys. I had an afro. It was big like Snoop's. And I go in there, I had on some shorts, had my socks pulled all the way up to my knees, my Chuck Taylors, like, you know, I thought I was a gangster. So I walk into this class, and this lady asks us to write a poem. I'm a hardcore gangster. I don't know about no poem. And so I write a poem. And see, coming up, I always equated poetry to love and flowers and, you know, all that, right? So I thought, oh, God, how can I write a poem about love? I wasn't feeling much love at the time. I don't even know if I loved myself at the time because of all the destructive things I was doing. And so I wrote a poem about my college football teammate who was murdered during the season that happened. I was 19, my sophomore year. My good friend was murdered in St. Louis, and it shook me up. And so I wrote a poem called The City of No Love. I thought it was great. The teacher thought it was bad. She gave me a D on it, right? And so a couple of weeks later, we went to short stories. And so I wrote this short story about something me and my friend, nothing illegal, I have to put this in there, but it was penitentiary chances that me and my friend did that year I was out of college. Like, it was this wild story, but I just changed the names. I changed the names to protect the guilty, right? And so my creative writing professor accused me of plagiarism. She said, no one's word goes from that bad to that good in that short of time. There's no way. I need you to come to my office. I need you to sit down at my computer with no notes, and you write a different story, but in the same tone, style, and vernacular. That's what she said. All right. Because I knew I hadn't cheated. I knew that was me and my buddy's story. So I go in there and I wrote another story about another caper we did. And she stood over me, and she wanted me to write for 15 minutes. Within 5 minutes, she put her hands on my shoulder. She said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. So I took this class. I took creative writing, advanced creative writing, and creative writing for publication. I had this teacher all 3 years. That first year, I got an A. The next 2 years, I got a B. So that tells me she felt guilty and gave me an A. But those words that she dropped on me, that confidence, because if you're accusing me of plagiarism, that means either I'm going to get kicked out of school or I'm a pretty dope writer. And so that confidence that she put in me was priceless. So when I wrote my first book in the year 2008, I asked her to write the foreword for my first book. And she's one of my great friends. And I don't know how we even got on that story, but I just want to leave you guys with that nugget. The power of words. The power of words is the last word. There it is. Yes. Oh, yes. Okay.
Okay, I have just a statement, not necessarily a question. I would like you to write a book about your conversations with God with all these trials and tribulations you had. I mean, it would be over entry personified.
Oh, my God. I might have me an agent over here, huh? You want to sign some paperwork? Help me get a deal. There you go. There you go. That's great. No, that's a testimony. That's great. So I'm working on a project. I'm calling it The Plain Ugly Truth. And one of the stories that I have in there was, what are your thoughts on God? And it touches on a lot of what you're saying. So, yeah, definitely. I got to put that testimony out there.
I love that you learned power vocabulary words because I taught power vocabulary words to my debate and speech students. And it made a huge difference in those kiddos.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You kicked us off beautifully. Thank you so much. Just a reminder, so next week is going to be online only, so we won't be here in person. I know this year is a little wonky because why? COVID. COVID, like everything else. So, we won't be doing the soup like we used to and things like that. So next week will be online only. We have Mr. Michael Kleber Diggs. He is a Black poet. He lives up in Milwaukee, I believe. And I actually interviewed him already, and so I will be editing that video and putting it out. He is extraordinary. You will love it. He has some really, really wonderful things to say, also sort of the power of the word. So thank you all very much for being here. Yes, sir. That is correct. It will go out at noon, but it will, yeah.
Go out like the daily meditations. It'll be live at noon, and you can participate that way. And then it'll stay up on the sites after that.
Yeah.
So we can't interact
Not with him, no.
with the group. Is it just a lecture?
Yes. Yes, okay. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I got a shirt just like that.
I know, I just get to do it so well now, and it's just not the same.